Hello, everybody. It's Saturday. It's me, Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, BMR. How you all this fine Saturday afternoon? I want to thank all of you for buying my books. Bigfoot, Michigan Rob presents True Cryptid Encounters Book 1. It's been out over a year. And Book 2, which has been out a little over a month. Thanks for buying it. Type in Bigfoot, Michigan Rob on your Amazon browser to find them. If you have bought it, thanks again. Leave a review. It's all analytics these days. It does push book sales. Don't forget, I am on Tuesday nights live at 9, Thursday afternoon, 1 o'clock live, and Saturday, which is today, midnight, 11 Central, 9 Pacific. Tonight's show with Monica, we're talking Mexican monsters and folklore. Tune on in tonight. So thank you for that. So I'm going to get on with this. I got this email. This guy, Richard Jr., now, he sent me an email about 6 months ago, which I never opened. Last week, he sent me a follow-up email. And it kind of ticked me off, you guys, because he starts out this second email. Again, did not open his first email. I guess my stories were too boring for you, Rob. I immediately respond back. Listen, number one, I didn't open your first one, and I have so many emails. There's tons that I have not opened. And I don't find any encounter stories boring. You know, I started this channel about 3 years ago to help people because no one helped me when I had my encounter in 2018. So the number one goal of what I do today is to help people. And I love doing what I do. I love this. I love providing this content. And it's also, I don't care. We've heard Bigfoot crossing the road 1,000 times. To some people, that might be boring, but to me, it's not. If you see something 8 foot tall crossing the road that's not supposed to exist, 1,200 pounds. If you see that personally, that's certainly not boring. I get it. That's been done. But you know, it's all about data. We need data for all these accounts, right? Whether they're horrific, terrifying, happy, sad. The data is what drives me, and helping people drives me. Sure, we all want views. I'm not going to lie to you. If I wanted nothing but views, however, I would do a creepy pasta show. I would talk about Dogman 24/7. That's the sexy thing. But I do it all because it's all important to me. You, the audience, is important. You people that have these accounts, it's important to me. He goes on in the email to tell me that this is his father's experiences from the big thicket in Texas. His father in the early 70s hand wrote these experiences out. And supposedly his father published these maybe a decade ago online. Well, Richard Jr. can't find these online anywhere, so he wants something online. He goes on to say that he doesn't want to do a video. He's shy, doesn't want to have his face on a camera, so he asked me to do this for him. And I'm certainly doing this for this guy. I don't find these boring at all. I don't think you guys will. So Jim, yeah, I'm doing this for you. Um, and he also goes on because I want my dad as a way for him to celebrate the passing of his dad because he thinks this somehow, some way, will keep him alive even long after Richard Jr. passes on. Which is the great thing about the internet, you guys. Once you publish something, it's going to be there 100 years from now. It really is. So I've spoke enough. Please subscribe if you're new. So, Richard Jr., I'm going to tell your dad's accounts for your posterity, if you will. This is through Richard Jr.'s dad's eyes, what he experienced in the 70s. So, this is through the eyes, the thoughts from his father. His dad goes on. I haven't told anybody about this in all these years, but I will never forget it. I'm 52 years old now. So already, at the time of this, the man is 52, you guys. He waited forever just to write this. I live in Washington State. I didn't think about it before I moved up here, but there are Bigfoot in Washington State, as well as the big thicket of Texas. Luckily for me, I haven't seen one since Texas. I'm not looking forward to seeing one either ever again. I want to describe what I've seen. My first encounter was in the summer of 1973. A school buddy of mine, along with my little brother, went camping not far from my house. This place was in the middle of a large field with with four ponds in it. They were called dynamite holes. That's because the holes were blasted out with dynamite when they were looking for oil several years ago. We decided to put our two-man pup tent off to one side of the pond that we did for most of our swimming. There was another pond next to it that had a lot of weeds around it, so no one really swam in that one. The bank was slightly elevated around the area, and I had my sleeping bag, and the water around the pond was only about 10 or 15 feet away. That was the weed pond, and it was to the north of us. The next pond was the one we swam in, and it was off just to the east of us. There also were two other ponds nearby. A lot of water, you guys, a lot of water. One was northeast of the weed pond and had a small area that connected with the swimming pond. And another pond was about 50 yards southwest of the campsite. Okay, enough of the ponds. Somewhere between 10 o'clock and midnight that night, everybody went to bed. I went into my sleeping bag with my head towards the weed pond so I could see the fire we had going about 5 feet from my feet. The tent was off to my left about 20 feet or less. It was a clear night with hardly any breeze at all. I had my dog, and my buddy also had his two dogs. They were lying on the opposite sides of the fire pit. The fire was getting low, and I was just about to fall asleep, but I could hear something walking around the west side of the pond, heading my way. It was coming up pretty fast with long, heavy steps. I looked down at the fire because the dogs were growling and looking past me over my head. The footsteps stopped just as it got behind me. I knew the pond was 10 feet from my head, so this thing was less than 10 feet from me, and I couldn't move. All I could do was keep the sleeping bag hood over my head and keep watching the dogs. My plan was that if this thing tried to grab me, hopefully the dogs would jump up and scare it off. But all they did was stare at the thing, which I now believe was a Bigfoot, that was in back of me and growled with their eyes as wide as silver dollars. But they never moved. They were almost paralyzed. After what seemed like 20 minutes, the thing, or the Bigfoot, went on its way around the pond, past the tent where the two other dogs were sleeping. That's when I got out of the sleeping bag and went over to the tent to wake the others. Mike had a shotgun, my buddy I was with, but by the time they came, the creature in the distance was too far away for a shot. Several hundred yards from the pond off to the east was a church, and they had lights in their parking lot. The field had been mowed not long before we went camping, so you could see the silhouette of this creature running in between the fields up to the church. This thing was big, long hair hanging from its arms, and it was moving fast across the field, even though it was only walking. We watched it disappear into the tree line. My second encounter was a few weeks after the camping trip. I was at home. We had a house that was L-shaped with a small storage room on the north side. Between the storeroom and the inside corner was a concrete patio, and next to the storeroom was the sliding back door that went into the den or the family room. It was about 9 or 10 o'clock, at night, and I was getting ready to go to bed. I was in the bathroom that was next to the inside corner of the home and had a window that looked out onto the patio at the back of the house. The light was on next to the back door so you could see everything that was on the patio up to the side of the storeroom. As I finished my shower and was drying off, I could see the full shape of someone or something standing at the back sliding door, looking into the den area where my dad was sitting. My dad was in his lounge chair with his back to the door, watching the television that was on the opposite wall. Although the bathroom window had water on it from the steam, I could see that this creature looking in was bent forward in order to have its head low enough to be able to see in the house. This was a big, hair-covered person. It was bulky. It reminded me of the same silhouette figure from my first experience. I decided to wipe the window with my towel. I should have turned on the lights first in the bathroom, but I didn't, and I just started to wipe off the window. As this thing now stands up, it looks directly at me. It was one step off the patio, around the storage room. I got to look at it. It was a figure covered in hair, a man-like beast. If I remember correctly, the size of the patio was 6 feet by 12 feet. It only had to take one step to cover at least 5 feet and got off of the patio. I covered myself with the towel and went into the den where my dad was thinking or sleeping, or thinking maybe he had fallen asleep with the TV on like he always did. But he was awake in his chair, and I told him what I saw. He looked at me and said, "Yeah, I know. I could see that big shadow of something ominous and huge at the back door of the den." I asked him what he wanted to do about it. He said, "Well, what is there to do about it, actually, son?" My third and final encounter here from Texas in the big thicket was several months later. After my second encounter, I was going for a walk down the street to visit a friend of mine. My house was in the middle of the block, off to a street adjacent to my friend Greg's house. I can't remember the time, but it was dark. It was outside. The porch lights were on. The house across from mine was just on the north side, and there was a vacant house next to it, where kids went and smoked cigarettes and drank beers to hide from our parents. After I walked out of the house, I could hear dogs barking from the other side of the street behind the old vacant lot or house. I didn't really think much of it, and I started walking up the street again to my buddy Greg's house. As soon as I made it past the old house, I heard the dogs. They were going nuts. So I turned to see what they were looking at or barking at. Then I saw this large, again, this creature, almost like the other two encounters, a big, hair-covered creature, humanoid, if you will, walking. It was walking across a 3 or 4 foot high chain link fence, and he just towered over it. In fact, it was almost half the size of my friend Greg's house. I stopped and looked. The head of this creature turned and stared at me, much like I got stared at from inside the shower. I kept walking to Greg's house, looking back. The creature was approaching Greg's house as fastly as I was, staring me down. Right before I got to Greg's house, right to the porch, the creature once again vanished into the tree line. Well, I don't think those were boring, Richard Jr. I hope I did you service, and I'm glad to get this out on the web, on YouTube, whatever, for posterity for you. Hey, listen, I apologize for not getting to you faster. I don't think that's boring. I think that's great data. I think that your dad, I think he came across Bigfoot. He described it pretty accurately. I mean, accurately is not the right word, you guys. Like anything else that's been described to me, right? Definitely Bigfoot encounters. Help out Richard Jr. Leave a comment what your thoughts. I think it was great. I think it was well worth sharing. Because when I share things, you guys, again, it's about data. It's about helping people. that's what I love to do. If you like, just give me a thumbs up. Hey, if you did, give me a thumbs down. You know me. I just roll with the flow. I do this for you guys, and I do it for myself because every time I do an encounter story, it does help me with what happened to me in 2018. So thank you to everybody. Subscribe if you're new. Tonight, midnight, me and Monica, Monsters of Mexico, Mexican Monsters and Folklore, midnight, 11 Central, 9 Pacific. Thanks for taking your time out of the day. It's a little after 12 in Michigan, and I am going to bid you adieu. I am BMR. Have a great day.